We start a new series today. When I got going with this, I don't mind telling you the background. I was reading scripture and I ran across the word treasure maybe 2 years ago. And I like to go on hunts. You do realize if you like to garage sale, you really are going on a treasure hunt. That's all you're really doing. If you go out and you look around as you walk and you look for stuff, if you pick up coins, you do that, you like a treasure hunt. You look for things. Maybe you go to antique shops looking for particular special things. You're on a treasure hunt. So there's something within all of us that we like to find, wow, that's unusual, that's odd, that's different. And we grab hold of it, and in our minds, we put great treasure to that. So what I did is I found all the words in the Bible that had the word treasure in them. And I looked at that, and I started numbering them being lessons. I ran a copy, and I just my ink pen. I just started, this could go first. I could see this second and third, and I did all of that. And then I put the numbers on the computer with the thing, and as I normally do, I walk away from it. I just let it cook. And I never thought of it again. We got into other things. I developed other stuff, worked on other lessons. But I always knew it was there because I saw with all the other stuff I'm working on. Then I started reading. Someone started handing me their a month-old Bible archaeology. My wife started sending me stuff that all of a sudden Christian Post was coming up and posting every day discoveries. And I said, I was going about that lesson wrong, Lord. I said, I need to put what's in the scripture together with what we're finding out and bring some things together and find something that might be common to some of you, but most of the time it will be brand new to you. I'm not going to take you anywhere that you've not heard of in a slide presentation, but I'm going to take you to things that you may not know about. And we're going to see some things that we might say are very little matters that are dug up. Sometimes it's just, there's a rock that big that's it's actually in, I think, today's lesson, if I get that far after the intro. But what is the significance of something just that minute? It can be major, and it has, oftentimes it can have biblical proportions. And so I want you to follow along with me. We're going to find some interesting things. The introduction lesson is about archaeology. It's sort of, I give you a quick brush over course of, if you go start digging things up over in the Holy Land or places where digs are going on, and I do give you some vocabulary. You're probably looking at a lot of it. I didn't give you a lot of blanks. And then I'm going to share some things that might not be on there, and some things that I found actually this morning too that I wanted to share with you. So let me get this rolling here. And this is all about the introduction. This is sort of the map of the course. So if you could follow with me. I think I've given you a Bible verse here that you don't have. And I put it up there because I was reading and I ran across this in Psalms 102 verse 14. O Zion, or Israel, your servants take delight in its stones and favor its dust. And I'm thinking that's an archaeologist's dream. Stones and just dust. But then I went to Psalm 102 and I read it last night. I was in there at the computer table and Carol was out on the couch and said, listen, honey, listen to this verse. And I read it out loud. And she says, you're at it again, aren't you? And I said, yes. And so I opened up my Bible and I read the whole thing. And that verse doesn't tell the true story. It doesn't have David's name on it as the writer. David wrote the couple before and some after. And so I'm not going to attribute it to David. I don't know that it was his or not. But whoever the writer was, as they were in Israel, they were probably in Jerusalem. And they were living, and the whole front part of it was, Lord, I'm miserable. I don't feel good. I get up and my hips hurt and my legs are stiff. And it just, life is hard. And then it goes on to say, Lord, I'm done with me personally, but we are an afflicted people. It appears that Jerusalem is not in good shape because there's been some battles fought, and there's debris, and there's stones, and there's dust around, and people are now, they've not just maybe lost, and individuals have lost health, but people have lost purpose. They're discouraged and that they're down. And we come to verse 14 and we come to this verse, and it's almost like it's a turnaround verse. Get this and follow with me on the flip side of this. Here this person comes and says, "O Zion, your servants take delight." And he's talking to the Lord, talks to the Lord first, and says, "Oh," and looks at the city and says, "O Jerusalem, your servants take delight in its stones and favor its dust." And this person goes on and continues to write and said, "Lord, amidst this garbage and all of this stuff, you're here. Amidst the turmoil and the mess that we're in, you are present. And Lord, we know your promises that Messiah is coming, that Jerusalem's going to shine again, and we have the best to look forward to." And I thought about that a minute. In some ways, our country's in dust and stones. Morally, we're bankrupt. There's no morals any longer. Doesn't exist. I heard a preacher explain something very interesting when they said in the last days that wrong is right and right is wrong. And he said, here's how you need to understand this. Don't take them right and wrong and right. Do not take them together. He said, the first one is this, and we're in it right now, but we're starting to make the transition, that which is wrong and sin has become right. Think about our nation and how we're falling. Homosexuality, that's wrong. But wait a minute, now it's right. We have to be inclusive. Marriage, they're even talking right now that they are starting to turn on people that are married, that they are wrong. Yes, question?
Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil.
Yes.
Who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter.
Okay, Isaiah what?
5:20.
5:20. Okay, there's the evil now, the side of it. But remember, it started with evil or wickedness is good, is righteousness. After that has been accomplished, and we are on the verge of that totally being accomplished, now they will turn on those that stand for right and make them evil and come after them. All of a sudden now the Christian will be evil, a hate person, a monger, a biased person, someone that is filthy, we want nothing to do, and society does not need them. Those that are married and have long marriages and they have great kids, you will become evil because now you are not part, you're not inclusive, yet you are reclusive. You just believe that. People that believe in one way to heaven, you are wrong. How can you say that? You hate people. So the flip side is going on, and it's much like this the Jews lived in throughout the Bible. They had a tough time. Let's move on. What is archaeology? Archaeology, the study and pursuit of treasures of wealth below arches. The Arch of Triumph in Paris, the St. Louis Arch. However, just hang on with me. It's not in your notes. You need to see this, not look at it in printing. More valuable as you walk out of here with it.
They're worried about the blanks.
Yeah, don't worry about the blanks. That's coming up. Okay? But however, the arch of most importance and of most important study of all is the golden arches. Ladies and gentlemen, as we go treasure hunting, you will find the greatest wealth of treasure under these arches. Gold chicken nuggets. Silver dollar pancakes. Look at the triple stack of them over there. Unbelievable. Pile them high and give me the bottle of syrup. I just eat them and drink the syrup and I'll be happy. Oh, they're so good. Bronze crispy French fries. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruby Gems Red Jeweled Milkshakes. I'll drink all three. Line them up. I don't care what flavor. Iron Man Super Drink. Now that's a drink for men right there. Give me a Coke and I'm happy and I'm on fire. I have found treasures there. Ready to go treasure hunting? I don't think. Let's go eat first. I'm hungry. All right, back to your notes. That was free. Now you got to get serious. All right. Okay, please. Okay, archaeology is the study of people and cultures of the past through objects they left behind. We get archaic from archaeology. Archaic is something old. Okay, and always when you see the word ology, psychology, bibliology, anything that's an ology, it actually is a suffix for the study of something. Just the study of that. So the archaic, it's the study of archaic things if you really want to know the actual Greek of it. But we understand it as people and cultures of the past through what's been left behind. In Florida, it's a treasure hunt for old stuff in at garage sales. But if you go over to Israel, got news for you. You can go about anywhere and take out a shovel and start digging, and if you spend a day, you're going to find at least some coins. You're going to find something somewhere. The problem with going, though, to Israel with your shovel and saying, let's dig, I'm sorry, anything that is the nation of Israel is under their over their archaeological historical society. You have to have permission to dig, and anything you find does not belong to you. The second, which probably is the biggest reason of why aren't we digging up, why aren't we finding the ark, and why aren't we digging over here, and why aren't we doing this over here? Let's go at it. The biggest issue, can you guess what it is? You want to take a stab? No. It's the governments. It's not Israel. It's Syria. It's Edom, old Edom, right? Jordan. They can't, on this side where Qumran is, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were, and Masada, and that strip of land right there, Israel belongs to that. But they signed an accord like 20 years ago for peace that they won't dig there because the Muslims across the Dead Sea didn't want them digging up. Muslims do not want Jews digging up proof of the Word of God and of their heritage that the Jews were there 2,000 years ago. And the land belongs to them. They don't believe. They believe it is theirs. Palestinians, the Muslims, they feel that if they had their way, the Jews would be run into the sea. They'll say that. And it'll destroy them completely. But God has put his people in the land. And so for them to just dig here and there could be a bomb dropped on you if you go in the wrong area. So that is the biggest holdup. Are treaties that have been made and concessions, and where can we go and why can't we do that? Okay, so let's move on. What are different kinds of archaeology? I don't think these are not blanks, are they? Okay, prehistoric and classical archaeology go together. They identify, what they do is they go after a culture. They want to learn all about the Philistines. They don't care if they find coins. Well, whatever they find has got to tell them about the culture, how they live. They want to know, how do you live day by day? What did you wear? Where did you go? Well, just get on the internet and ask Google. They'll tell you where you've been and what you're doing. Number two is there's a lot of underwater archaeology, and that's generally to describe the manner of the conditions under which the excavation is done. They've got to go underwater, and the study isn't necessarily the item. It's the item, how do we get to it? And if we're going to raise it, how do we do it? So there's more, the archaeologist either has to have an incredible underwater engineering team, or they've got to be that themselves. Okay, so like Jacques Cousteau, okay, he was one of these, but he had access to ships all over the place, boats, and all sorts of underwater gear and all sorts of stuff. So like the finding of the Titanic would fall into here. Anything underwater. We will do one underwater thing. I have an underwater one. Okay, lastly, the historical archaeology, and that's most of the Bible lands. That's where we are. And that's going to be most of us over in the Holy Land, and not just in Israel. We are going to move around. So there's other stuff. Okay, how are archaeological sites formed? And just stuff. I got asked questions. One of the questions I got asked a couple of weeks ago, with all this stuff, why aren't we digging it all up? Well, I've answered that, and it comes up right here. The very first thing that you have to understand that archaeologists, when they go at, they don't, once they've got their permit, and they've got their team and everything, they got all their equipment, they just don't go in and start digging holes. They do, but they don't. You're going to see how it plays out here in a minute. So a layer of history that is formed is called a strata. How a strata is formed, time makes it. Just layers of dirt and debris starts to fill in. I've lived in our home that we have in Seminole. It was built on a hill, on a declining, not a bad hill, about like that, goes down. But when it rains, we know that the water goes down somehow in the backyards between three houses and ends up at the bottom of the hill at the kitty corner of the house block, the inside of it. So, but anyway, we've mulched. Carol's a gardener, and so we've mulched a path, and we put some pavers here and there, and insides the garden, everything. About 3 years ago, I had to go in it and step over, and I had to trim the bush in front of our bedroom window, which the pavers were there. And I stepped up over, but all of a sudden, my foot went down about 6 inches. I hadn't done that in a few years. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I put these pavers here. Who's dug here? What's going on? The pavers were there, but what had happened was they had held, we continued to mulch, and then we'd actually mulched the whole area up. The original actual land, that layer was that down, but underneath of us that used to be it, all of a sudden we created a strata. We created a layer. So the way people lived, if I lived in a dirt floor back in Bible times, if I was just walking along and I was eating the rest of chicken off the breast and had the bone there, if they threw it and missed the garbage pot or whatever, they didn't care, just threw their garbage there, it could be trampled right into that dirt, and all of a sudden, we're digging up chicken bones from 2,000 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago. So debris could just be chucked and just tossed.
But there's no fritters.
There are no fritters, so that's a real problem. Okay, you understand that with war, and this is one of the biggest ones, cities get demolished in war, and all of a sudden, there's just, it creates a large layer. They burn them, they level them, and then later on they start to build them, but they don't look at it and say, man, that piece of steel looks good, and there's some nails we could use. No, they just fill it in and just start building up over it. That's what they do. Natural disaster also. Disease, sickness can just create layers. Yes, sir?
At one of our bygone storms that we had, a road out in Indian Rocks showed up where the highway used to be, and it was down when the sand washed away and all the stuff. There's the line on the pavement and the stuff. Yeah.
Well, we do the same thing whenever we pave a road.
Sure.
We're doing the parking lot this week on Wednesday out here. Okay, it's going to form a baby strata, isn't it?
Sure.
It's got to, what you're looking at right now, all of a sudden becomes the next layer down. And if the Lord doesn't come back for 3,000 years or something, quite truthfully, this building will not exist. And what will happen to it? Well, they'll bulldoze it. They may take whatever they can, but they bulldoze over. And when they killed the city Seminole Mall, we watched them. Yeah. They put big fences up, and then they brought stuff in. And what they did, they knocked everything down, and they threw it over into a cruncher. And this thing made a big pile of the mall in baby little pebbles and stuff. And then the bulldozers came in and just leveled it all out. And what exists is the Seminole City Center right now. The old mall is one layer under. Yeah. It literally is. They took the steel away, but all the concrete, tons of it, thousands of tons, and just did that. Okay, if you'll look, and Debbie, if you got your red pen, if you don't mind, please, look at the upper level here. And this is just some strata for you here. I really don't know what it is, but it looks like it could be a road. And do you see the second level? And here's a third, actually, because you see the changing of the color. And so this goes down about 6 levels. You might say, well, how long does it take? Well, it depends on where you are. Yeah. Stratas can be different sizes. They could be like my yard, or it could be a city. That's what they do. So you have a picture there. I think the one that I saw, and I couldn't find a picture of it anywhere, was when we were at Jericho. We looked across at the excavation in a hill that was maybe as tall as the ceiling here, and we saw strata just like that go down about 22 levels. Our guide told us, they said, Jericho, all those levels that you see, Jericho, or no, this was Masada. Not Jericho, it was at Masada I saw this. And they said, Masada has been the most destroyed and rebuilt city in Israel that we've found today. And we could just count, all those levels were cities at one time, was that city. Now all of a sudden we understand that Masada, why would that play such a big important part in history, all along history? We understand that it plays an immense part in the book of Revelation. In the battle of battles, the battle of Armageddon is right outside of Megiddo. And it wasn't Masada, it was Megiddo. Did I say Masada? Yeah, you're getting them. Okay, yeah, I hate to tell you, I'm giving away some stuff in the future here. Sorry. Okay, yeah, it's Megiddo that strata was. Okay, here's just do you see the picture here? This may help a little. This is the present. It's just a hill that's been made, and civilization started down here. And you see they had sort of a tower and a stairwell. And they built, here's some things that they built. But so all of a sudden it gets destroyed. Next one comes along, it just fills in and they rebuild. And all of a sudden something happens. The dirt, just time covers everything up. And it disappears. And it's gone. And that's what they're finding in Israel. Okay, number 2, the word dig. A dig is an area being searched for clues of the past. It's an archaeological expedition. And so if I use the word dig, if I say, hey, I dig you, that means I think you're cool. But if I just call a dig, that means people were out digging. Yeah. Or you could go on a dig. Today, if you go to Israel, if you just Google, check out archaeological digs Israel, there are some that you can pay to join. You'd be supervised. But again, keep in mind, anything you find, you can take a picture of, but you have to give it back. I wouldn't mind doing that if I found it. That would be cool. But that would be, when Carol and I were there, we had one going on. There was a person standing right there and say, come on, you can come help us. Well, we were part of a group, and so we couldn't break away from the group. But we had been offered free to come over for a couple hours and just dig. But we didn't do that. Okay, do you sort of see how digs go on? And this is one. They're not laying the foundation for a Kmart. They actually are digging. But do you see how hard it is in Israel, in the cities? Because you get roads and everything. And what you really have to do, once you've got the Historical Dig Society behind you, then you've got clear carte blanche to go digging down in there. And so you just put fences up around there and you go at it. Here's a larger one. Do you see it's sort of on the side of a hill? Hill's still going up. Okay, if you notice, do you see these sort of paths right here? Okay, that's what they probably would try to walk on, although this looks like this was a base of a wall at one time. And this could have. Any idea what this is right here that they've dug up? Think about it. All right, let me give you a hint. Animals walked around this. And what they did, the yoke of oxen they had attached, they were either grinding grain, but more than likely, it's a grape vat. Yeah. And what they would do you see over here these holes? The cisterns would have been dug underneath in the rock. And they'd either keep water in them, or there had to be a place down low for the juice to run, and then it'd go down there and get it. It's very interesting to tell you that the temperature in Israel and the Holy Land's not. It can get a little cold, but most of the time it's just plain hot. But you can keep things refrigerated underground real easy. If you get down underneath there, just get them in the darkness, get low enough. Okay, we'll come back to some of these things. An artifact is anything people made, used, altered through loss, discard, or disaster. Something. Could be a head, or it could be a whole statue. It could be a coin. An artifact can be a coin. Maybe you find skeleton. Now, this is not in Israel because these are the terracotta warriors in China. Anybody ever see these live? I don't know that did you get live? Did see them? Disney brought a few in to Epcot. They have, okay? It's cool. There are thousands of these, and they're guards. Okay, what you got to understand, when they dug these up, they just didn't take a lid off of the top and say, wow, look what we have here. It's a treasure chest. Yes, they had to go, look at this now. They are taller than you or me. They were huge, and there were tens of thousands of these. You can see some lost their heads, but they would have been at the base somewhere. So this is a dig. And I went out to our park, and I started digging around. And one layer down, I found an old Coke cap. Then I went to McDonald's and had a real one. A grid is the technique that they will use that's most often used on the site. What they do is they just graph paper it. They just put the ropes out. And what they'll do is if you have 5 people, one will start maybe in a corner, one will start 4 or 5 grids away. They don't all get in the same group and start digging in one area because they don't know what they're going to get. And so the easiest way to find something is spread out. Because if they're going to find a house or a cistern or a wall, it's going to cross somewhere in there and somebody's going to hit something and then they follow that. And so there's another one. A shard is a broken piece of pottery, just a chunk of it. An ossuary, oftentimes these are found. It can be a chest, a box, a building, a well, or a site made to serve as a final resting place of human skeletal remains. Okay? That, if you go to Israel and stand on the Mount of Olives and look down into the valley of Jezreel and up the other way, you'll see white boxes. Those are all tombs of Jews. And what they've done is when they're buried for a year, they are basically wrapped and they're put in like a tomb like Jesus had, but a cheap one. And they are laid there for 1 year till their body is nothing but bones left. The bones are put into a box, and they took them out and put them on the hillside. This is an ossuary. There's another one. You'd say it sure looks like an urn if you get cremated. It's on the same level. An epigraph is an engraved inscription. We'll find rocks, and we'll find coins. We'll find all sorts of stuff. A tell is a hill containing buried civilizations, cities. So you will hear this, and this will be in the newspapers or on TV or in magazines. It'll be called Tel Hazor. And what you're saying, we just found the city of Hazor in this hill. But the Hazor once was ground level or on the hill. So there's a hill, a tell. But there's one also. It's interesting. Do you see that there was civilization up above it. You see the sort of little wall that was there? And a pathway or something down. But most of the town was out here. Keep in mind, when people built a city and built a wall, most of the people lived outside. You had to farm, you cattle, you work. Poor people lived out there. What was inside there? Shops and government, whoever ran the place, horses, things of value were kept behind the wall. A bad army comes, everybody grabs their possessions and everything, and all the food they can, and they run inside the city walls. So this would have been just part of civilization. A wadi is a dried up creek bed. We have them here in our southwest. You see the blue arrow? This is sort of the water makes it, and then it dries, and then when it rains, it's a flash flood. But I also notice there's another wadi here. Yeah, that's a huge wadi. That doesn't dry up, though. So this, have you? I have not. I've been to it, but I haven't been down in it. A laser technology is being used more and more in finding and filling in the blanks of ancient sites around the world. Okay, for instance is this. Okay, this is not Israel, but this is what you can go visit today, the thing on the right. They found it with lasers, and what they did, this was totally, the jungle had taken it over totally. It's just like just jungle everywhere, but yet a couple pieces of things were hanging out or showing here and there. And when from the sky, they're using drones a lot now, but this came from a satellite. But they're using drones now to do this. And when it picked up, oh, this matches this matches this piece over in here. And so all of a sudden, the laser in the computer starts filling in as if that was the whole thing. And all of a sudden, this materializes. And then they go in and they open it up. This is also laser technology. They find out, they just take a chunk of land, and they just find out what's been in there. And so you can see parts of old cities right down and through here. What's this look like to you? Looks like water, doesn't it? Got to have waterways. So here's some water. But up on the hills, there's a lot of interesting things that existed. It looks like a solid wall here. And so then you go digging. You set up your perimeters and you go at it. Sandy? Of the body? That's an entire different study that I wouldn't even know how to get into it. But they're using lasers for eye surgery, but that's not to find something, that's to take something away, burn stuff off. Angela?
I didn't get to comment a minute ago, but when you were talking about the grid,
yeah.
We used to go on archaeological digs in the summer when I was in high school.
Cool.
We were only allowed to go 5 inches down in the dirt until we cleared that whole grid.
Yes.
We could go 5 more inches down.
Yeah, this isn't a race to the bottom somewhere. Right, and it's slow going. It is slow going. You don't want to break something. What is meant by, okay, we're going to come across this a lot. What is meant by the first and the second temple era? If you start reading archaeological magazines, they won't tell you what this means, but they'll put it in there, and you have to assume it. And so here's the clarification of it. This is new to you, I believe. Okay, if all you did was put First Temple - Solomon's Temple, and it was built in 982, and Nebuchadnezzar leveled it in 587. I know. I said, go ahead and just write that if you don't mind, and I'll wait a minute. Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar leveled it in 587. This was the very first Jewish temple that was built, Solomon's Temple. And he finished it right around 982 BC. So this stood for 400 years. But the Babylonians come, destroy Jerusalem. They take Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, that gang. Okay, and he takes them back, but he levels the temple. whenever you read about the Second Temple era, you read about when Ezra, Nehemiah, and Zerubbabel, 2 different trips, they were given permission to go back. Nehemiah was given permission to go back and build the wall. It was Ezra and Zerubbabel that before him, 100 years before him, were given permission to go back and rebuild the temple. And they did that. And so basically about 70 years later, Nehemiah is on the scene, and he says that he gets word that the walls are in shambles. Jerusalem's unprotected. Can I go back and rebuild the walls? And he did. Okay, does everybody have that? No. Okay, I'll give you a little more time. I understand. I have to 12 o'clock, you know. I needed to finish this. That's the bad part. Can I borrow time? If you got to go, it's okay. I'll feed you again next week or something. I don't know. Okay, you need to move on. What does archaeology have to do with the Bible? This is the last thing. Why are we even doing this? Why? What happens here? Okay, principle number 1. You need to get this down. This is actually principle reason number 1 through 100. It's 100 times this. This is when you go, archaeology does not prove the Bible to be true in any aspect. It doesn't. The Bible is already truth. The Bible is already true. All that archaeology do is sometimes can fill in blanks in the culture. For instance, we do not have a record of Jesus' entire life, do we? In the Bible. No, we don't. We don't really know what happened from 4 to 12 and from 13 to 30 or 27 or something in there. We know we can dig and we can learn the culture. And we can pick up here and know that, well, if Joseph was a carpenter, that he learned that trade. He was called the carpenter's son. So Jesus probably knew how to do rock work and chisel as well as build. But we don't know that for sure. That's why archaeology is not total truth, real truth. It can only support it in any way. Okay, archaeology should do the following. Do you have this? Yes. Good. Okay. It should provide the general cultural background and the history in the Bible. Can you give us background on people? I like that. That's good. And especially in cultures. Number 2, sort of goes along with that. The Bible tells us and gives us and tells us about a character, about a person. Archaeology, once again, can take that and when they lived and build some things around about what kind of education they would have had. We found a school here in this town. If they dig up a school or a synagogue in Nazareth, we very well could say Jesus went there and was taught Scripture as a child. He went to school there and learned. Okay, that's just the support. Going on, the customs of ancient civilizations, like in Mesopotamia, Egypt, Israel, they provide us with information to make meaningful interpretations of historical allusions in the Bible. That's like about the Canaanite civilization that's been lost, or about Philistines. Okay, Philistines were nasty. We don't know. History does not really know where they came from. It's pretty sure they've got a good guess. The Bible doesn't tell us. But the Philistines were in the backyard of the Israelites for hundreds of years and tormented them and enslaved them sometimes. And so the customs of how people lived and interacted will come through. That we read about it first in the Bible, then it can build around there. We are going to dig up a Philistine city. Archaeology is a resurrection of forgotten people. There's a list of some of them. That they are no longer part of now. Where did they go? They just disappeared. The Bible doesn't give us the whole story of events. Archaeology might give us insights. And archaeology can contribute to biblical interpretation. For instance, I grew up and heard preachers say, to be saved, it's easier for a rich man to go through the eye of a needle than to be born again. And I always grew up and said, well, there ain't any rich men going to heaven. Unless they cremate them and their wife sits there and pokes them through the needle eye. I mean, you read that, that's how you take it. You don't get any insight until you go to Jerusalem and your guide happens to say, okay, here's where the eye of the needle is. It was a gate that a man could get through by bending over, and it was small enough for any human to get through, but they had to bow to get through it, and no animal could go through. It was to keep all the animals out, to let the humans in. But the way to rich man, it's easier for him to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man just to get saved because he's so self-sufficient. The way he'd have to bow at the cross. He'd have to come in the door of Jesus Christ on his knees. That's the way to get in. So see, that sort of opens up, that says, that's really cool. When I heard that as a high schooler, I said, man, I need to read my Bible more. That's really good. Seeing, smelling, touching something dug up gives you a sense of reality and in the Bible event. And the same thing, when Carol and I went to Israel and we walked, I still see it in my head. Things became real. I realized that I was in a city that Jesus Christ was in. He walked many strata under most of the places. He lived a different culture. But I was there. I walked down in the Garden of Gethsemane, the olive trees that were there when he was. Disciples were there. He was betrayed there, hauled out of there by Romans. And it was a place of prayer. I was there. That still meant something. It's a treasure. We're now ready to set sail to ancient times and worlds. And I'm sorry I went over. I wanted to start with the very first. I will have a treasure chest with me every week when we start a brand new number.